The first process in project stakeholder management is identify stakeholders. Here we identify the people, groups, or organizations that could impact or be impacted by a decision, activity, or outcome of the project. We also analyze and document the relevant information regarding their interests, involvement, interdependencies, influence, and potential impact on project success. It's the first thing we do once the project charter is developed. The inputs for identifying the stakeholders are the project charter, procurement documents, enterprise environmental factors, and organizational process assets. Let's review two of them in detail. The project charter can provide information about internal and external parties related with the project and affected by the result or the execution of the project, such as project sponsors, customers, and other people or organizations affected by the project. Procurement documents are also an input here, since you might be working on a project that involves a third party doing some work or providing a service and there is an established contract. The parties in the contract would be key project stakeholders. The key tool and technique here is stakeholder analysis, in which we systematically gather and analyze quantitative and qualitative information to determine whose interests should be taken into account throughout the project. It's one way to clearly identify who the stakeholders are. You need to identify all of those who have an ability to change your project or change the result of your project. There are three key steps in this process, and they include: 1. Identifying all potential stakeholders and relevant information about them. Once we identify them, we could perhaps interview them to get a list of all potential stakeholders. Number 2. Analyze the potential impact or support each stakeholder could have on the project and then classify them in order to determine a management approach. One type of classification model or matrix we can use for stakeholder analysis is the power interest grid, as shown here, to classify stakeholders and determine the level of stakeholder management that will be required throughout the project in order to ensure its success. We classify stakeholders in this grid accordingly. A group with high power and positive interest. These are the people you want to have on your project, and you want to create a plan that empowers them and raises their interest. High power with negative interest. These are people who are very strong but have no interest at all. Positive interest, but not too much ability to influence. They are like cheerleaders or supporters that can motivate others, but their ability to influence the results are limited. You want to get them to motivate the key influencers on the project. And 3, finally, assess how key stakeholders are likely to react in particular situations so that a plan could be made to enhance support and mitigate potential negative impact of stakeholders. With the information on the stakeholders, you can begin to develop a plan to manage these individuals. Essentially, it's an art to understand the players involved and develop strategies to manage them. Our desired output for this process is the Stakeholder Register, which contains all of the relevant details about people and organizations impacted by the project, such as information regarding identification, the name, contact information, position, role, and location; assessment, the high-level requirements and expectations, potential influence and influences; and classification. Categorization, such as internal versus external or supporter versus resistor. Note that the stakeholder details such as level of influence, requirements, expectations, and classification become more defined and understood throughout the project. So it's important to continue to review and update the Stakeholder Register with more detail throughout the project.